Hey, Armin here. Welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show, where we cover training, nutrition, supplementation strategies, and a whole lot more. So stand by. Hey, and welcome to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
And I'm Frank Mills. Welcome to the show, whether you're watching or listening. We appreciate you joining us today. Armin and I have a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about Armin's current hormone optimization protocol. So we're going to be talking about that. And also in the second segment, is it better to weight train fasted?
Mhm.
So I think that's a very good topic. We've talked about a lot of different things about fasting, but weight training specifically, this is going to be good. So, Armin, another great show. But before we get started here, I'm sure a lot of people, as we promised them, a grand prize winner, and we've got that grand prize winner. But Armin and I, we had a problem trying to decide, and the folks at NSP were so gracious, they decided to extend another, like maybe a second or third prizes or a couple complimentary prizes as well for the ideas. Is that how you would describe it, Armin?
Yeah, we got permission to have two other additional prizes. So we're going to have, because of what we thought was a pretty good information. So we have some other gift cards are going to be an issue for two other people. So it'll be three people total. So hey, how about that?
Okay. So I'll let you do the announcing. So the grand prize winner of the contest is
That's going to be Joseph DeMarco. We really appreciate his input, and he wanted us to do a show based on the 21-day challenge. And we haven't really addressed that. We did something on someone talked about training the Hollywood stars, but we didn't really talk about the challenge itself and some of the moving parts to it. And we all agree that that's probably something that people are going to be kind of curious about, anyways, because we have a lot of guys participating in that. So give us some fresh insights.
So Joseph DeMarco gets the grand prize. I apologize. I don't remember all the things that were involved in that grand prize. I know it was a consultation with you, right, Armin?
Yeah, they get a 60-minute consultation with me. They're going to get an NSP t-shirt, so we'll get their shirt size, and then they get a $25 gift card.
Awesome.
For,
Okay.
whatever they need. So yeah.
Okay. So congratulations to you, Joseph. We appreciate your idea and your suggestion. Right? It's awesome.
Your contribution.
Okay. So now the other two guys, again, really kind of really surprised us with their ideas, but the reason why we felt compelled to give prizes and NSP agreed was they both kind of came up with the same idea but different. So okay. So Armin, why don't you explain kind of what happened?
All right. So we had one he's an NSP client. His name's Rob Harvey, Parvi. He's like, hey, why don't you have some guests on the show? So we like that. And that made sense. And so it's actually generated some other ideas that we're going to talk about in the future as well. But then another one, Jason Noseworthy, he's like, interview Daryl Conant. And so he was suggesting the same thing, but he also listed somebody to do that with. Now the other, Rob did as well, but we already contacted Daryl Conant, and so he's willing to do a show. So I'm going to do an interview with him. So it's all good, and so we're going to give them each a $25 gift certificate from NSP.
So congratulations to both of you guys. We appreciate that. Armin, just a little to elaborate a little bit more on the ideas is because of your idea, what you guys came up with. Yes, interviews. We've thought about that for the show, but to have three guys on the show is kind of cumbersome. Plus, this show was really designed by NSP Nutrition, Armin,
Mhm.
to really focus on weight training, supplementation, nutrition, just
Right.
anything to help you achieve better results, guidance, that kind of thing. The interview, though, really intrigued everyone, and it's basically going to create Armin doing his own solo show. And that'll be a part of, in some way, shape, or form, with the Vince's Gym format.
Yeah.
And we're still working out the details, but Armin's going to be interviewing someone in the fitness industry, in the workout world,
Yeah.
probably around monthly, maybe more. We're
We'll
still trying to
start.
work those out.
We're gonna start monthly. See how that goes
Okay.
with scheduling and everything. But we actually got 2 people lined up, so it should be interesting. And then
Ooh.
plus, we get different perspectives on things that they've done, and I can kind of drill down on a little bit about different things that they're doing versus what I'm doing, and get some different opinions. So it should be good.
Absolutely. More content for you guys. So we appreciate the suggestions, and keep them coming,
Yeah.
keep them coming, because that's going to get incorporated into the format of our shows as we progress. So thank you,
Right.
thank you, thank you. All right. So Armin, let's get on with the show.
hmm
Let's talk about your current hormone optimization protocol. What made you decide to talk about this topic specifically?
Well, I get asked this a lot, anyways, and I'm turning 59 this month, so uh, and I have to manage my own hormone levels, to keep them in optimal range. And the reason this
Mm-hmm.
is important is it's for longevity. Your hormones are messengers that tell your body tells your body how to operate. So if you want good longevity, you want to keep your hormones at a high level, because that's what rebuilds cells. That's what makes everything happen. And so I've learned a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of trial and error, dealing with different medical professionals. And I found that there's just a lot of misinformation out there
Mm-hmm.
with people who are actually struggling trying to improve their hormones. And so I'm hoping this will give you some ideas and shed some light on things that I found are working for me currently. And
Mm-hmm.
everything does evolve over time, but I'm talking about what I'm currently doing for now. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that would be good for you to kind of explain why an optimal range, why at a high level. I know you just
Yeah.
talked about the aging, but there's a little bit more to it than that, right?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, the hormones are the messengers that tell your body how to operate. And if the levels are low, which will happen over time because they do decrease no matter what you do, you're not going to be operating at a high level. You're going to be operating at a low level. And so this is going to
Mm-hmm.
affect your energy. It affects energy a lot, actually. You're going to fatigue easier. You're going to have lower sex drive. You're going to have less strength. You're going to accumulate more body fat. You're going to get brain fog. I mean, you're going to lose muscle mass. And these things are all reality, just to name a few, that when things aren't at optimal range, that's what's going to happen. And it's an absolute fact. So you want to have a way to fight that. I mean, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to, but if you don't, you're just going to age faster based on the declining levels. There's a lot of science that talks about that. So it is
Right.
important.
Well, Armin, for all that you do, from the weight training, the supplementation, the nutrition, to stay in the physique, in the shape that you are in, which is very, very amazing. Um, you know, it's definitely important to talk about how long you've been dealing with this, because if you're dealing with it, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
right. So it's got to be worse for guys who aren't doing what you're doing. So, how long has this been going on for you?
Well, I started to notice, mild effects when I was in my mid 40s, so 45, 46. And I really just thought, well, I'll just adjust my nutrition, I'll adjust my training a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it really didn't do a whole lot. And I was pretty disappointed, actually. I was like, oh, geez. And, I'm doing things really tight. But at the same time, I wasn't, I was doing a high carbohydrate, low fat type of diet or moderate fat type of diet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I really did a lot of research on, okay, what's involved with aging. And then what I learned initially was hormones are very involved with aging. And it's like, okay. So then I started learning about how hormones work. And um, that's intricate process because there's a lot of things to know, and not what people actually think there is, but there's a lot more to it. So about age 48 is when I decided, after having my levels checked, to move forward with how to get them back into range. And so that's
Gotcha.
what we're going to talk about. So been dealing with it for 12 years or so, and I've been on therapy for approximately 11 years. And I've made some really good improvements understanding how therapy works. And again, my goal, okay, is not to be over the top with therapy, because that's
Hmm.
not what you want to do. It's to be in optimal range. And
Right.
that's where I'm at, and that's where I've been able to achieve. So that's what I want to kind of talk about today.
Okay. Okay. So I am kind of curious. You said, I think it was 11 years, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. So did your therapy kind of change over the years? Yeah, it's a long time.
It absolutely did. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's kind of like, it's still pretty early on as far as, the development of how to improve your hormone levels, because the science was there. But then it's like,
Hmm.
okay, what do we do? What are the protocols to improve it? And when I first started, they're still pretty basic. And again,
Hmm.
we're talking about simple protocols to improve
Right.
testosterone and your DHEA, your pregnenolone, these other hormones, and then manage your estrogen. So, I started with one medical professional, then I ended up not being happy with that one, had to move to another one, and yeah, that it improved some. I
Hmm.
ended up having to do my own research, and then helping to educate with the doctors based on the questions I was asking. They're like, oh, okay, that's a good question.
Hmm.
So it was kind of an education for both sides. So I'm on my fifth medical professional, because I'm continuously trying to improve what gets done to make a really good protocol. And
Hmm.
so the good news is what I've learned, has allowed me to take less testosterone, which is great compared to what I've seen most people take, because I was able to maintain what little testosterone my body was making. I've still been able to maintain that, and that's important.
Hmm.
And you're going to see a lot of people that they don't think it's important. They think, well, it's only important if you want to have kids. That's not true. You want
Hmm.
to keep your feedback loop, your hormonal system working as long as possible, because
Hmm.
at some point it will, start to shut down some. But if you do the things that you need to do, it won't, and you're going to have better longevity. So, and then there's a lot of to learn on that. But at the same time,
Hmm.
that's what we're going to talk about, is how to get the best return for your efforts, and not get yourself in a situation where it just doesn't work for you. Because there's a lot of guys out there that didn't approach it right, and they're on the struggle bus. Because I'm in these different Facebook groups, and it's amazing what these some of the dumbest things these people are doing, but
Hmm.
they're struggling now. So, anyways.
Right. Right. Well, I'm kind of curious, and I'm sure our audience is, like, with the things that you had to do to kind of stay on track or even improve, um, for the things that you found out there, it had to be very tough to go through, like, just finding a doctor, that understood what you were talking about, to try to find these answers. That was a difficult path for you, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be kind of determined. Well, I had to be determined at that point. I went through three regular medical doctors, and they just like, well, it's just part of aging. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to do about it.
Hmm.
And then I did meet one that had some knowledge, and he wanted $2,500 up front. And I'm like, well, I don't even know if it's going to work, if I even like you. So I'm not
Right.
going to pay you $2,500 up front. So, I mean, that's what you got to watch out for. And so, anyways, as I kept learning and researching, and then talking
Hmm.
to him, I kept comparing, notes with what this doctor group would do versus this other doctor group. And so I'm constantly doing it. I'm always looking for who's cutting edge, who's got good research and has good strategy, so it gets better and easier to implement. Because it got a little complicated for a short period there because of the different people I'm working with. But
Hmm.
now I've got it a lot more stable as far as I'm concerned. Now you may feel otherwise, but
Right. Well, it's been not only a long process, but it's a constant process, because it's important to you. You're passionate
yeah,
about it, and you want to stay right at the optimum level that you can. So I get that.
yeah.
Um, let's talk about what you're doing today. What's your
Okay.
current protocol and the things you're doing now?
Okay. So to kind of tell you in the beginning, the first doctor I worked with, they put me on 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. So it was an injectable. You do one shot a week. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was on some DHEA, 25 milligrams of DHEA, which is dehydroepiandrosterone.
Mm-hmm.
That's just something that helps your body to make hormones as well, testosterone, estrogen, etc. And then because they put me on testosterone, they put me on a anastrozole, which is what's called an estrogen blocker to help manage estrogen. And then on top of that, my thyroid was pretty sluggish, so they put me on 30 milligrams of Armor, which is a natural desiccated way to improve your thyroid gland operation. So that's
Hmm.
what I started with initially, and that is
Okay.
doing the Armor daily on an empty stomach in the morning. But today, after working with different medical professionals and learning more, I take pregnenolone in the morning and DHEA. So the pregnenolone, which is a hormone precursor, and so is DHEA. These help you to make testosterone, help you make other hormones, estrogen, etc. So I take 200 milligrams of pregnenolone, which also helps with brain function too,
Mm-hmm.
and then 25 milligrams of DHEA. So this helps me to continue to make some hormones with my current system. And then for the estrogen and sex binding hormone globulin management, I take calcium deglucarate, myomin, which is an estrogen, natural estrogen blocker, and then triple action cruciferous vegetable extracts. I take those daily to manage the estrogen and also to manage the cell. One of the things with the cruciferous vegetable extracts, it's a kind of a preventative for any kind of cancerous cell or tumor cell development. It kind of nullifies that. That's why
Mm-hmm.
broccoli and these cruciferous vegetables are highly recommended. So that's what I'm doing regarding that. Okay, so I take the pregnenolone DHA in the morning, and I take before I go to bed. I take the calcium glucarate, the myomin, it's myomin, and then the triple
Okay.
action cruciferous vegetables. And then also in the morning, I take I'm up to 75 milligrams of Armor because my thyroid is, again, it's still working well, but it's still
Mm-hmm.
fluctuating some on top of that.
Okay.
Now, then with testosterone, I started with 200 milligrams. Because of these other strategies that I'm doing now, I'm down to 80 milligrams. So of less than half, which is awesome. And it also saves you money too. Not that
Right.
it's real expensive. So, but the way I do it now, I take the testosterone twice a week and I do it subcutaneously. So you're just using an insulin syringe versus an intramuscular injection. So this is really easy to do. It's, you don't get any kind of pain at all. Like sometimes you do it in a muscular injection, it can be a little nerve wracking depending on with the needle, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't have that when you do subcutaneous. And so because I do it twice a week, I'm doing it. It's called microdosing. So I get a small amount. That's kind of how your body makes testosterone. It doesn't make a whole bunch of it and then let it sit. It makes so much every day. So this
Mm-hmm.
kind of mimics that. So I take the shot on Tuesday and Saturday. That gives me a little bit of time in between because the levels start to decrease after the first injection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to help keep my current feedback loop working, so I continue to make testosterone as well with the supplements, I've been taking 25 units of HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. And what that is, you take that with an insulin syringe, and I take that twice a week. That's to get the body to continue to make luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, which tells the pituitary to make testosterone.
Okay.
So that's the purpose of that. So I take those shots on Thursday and Friday. Okay, so that's the way it's designed to do to help keep that working. And but what I'm going to do now is HCG is becoming a lot harder to get because of different things going on with the pharmaceutical companies and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be switching to Kispeptin, which is similar, and I'll be doing 20 units of that with an insulin syringe 5 to 7 days a week, again, to keep the body making testosterone. But it's just a mild booster. So it just causes your luteinizing hormone, your follicle stimulating hormone to keep doing what it's supposed to be doing. Now I know that sounds kind of complicated and probably a lot, but it's pretty simplified at this point
Mm-hmm.
for
Well,
what that's worth.
yeah. I mean, obviously, Armin, you've done a lot of research to
Oh yeah.
progress from where you were to what you're doing now, and you saved probably yourself a lot of time and money with some of the things that you have researched. But I was kind of curious, what is the rationale behind the protocol compared to other protocols that you have seen out there? You know, there are quite a
Uh,
few.
yeah, it's pretty messy actually, because I'm in these different groups, but most of these, unfortunately, a lot of guys are getting these cookie cutter protocols where it's, they start with a 200 milligram intramuscular injection once a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll put them on an anastrozole, the estrogen blocker, which is 1 milligram split up. So you take a zero 0.5 twice a week, and maybe if they got the right doctor, they're doing some HCG or something to keep their feedback loop working. But a lot of them aren't. So that whole
Right.
system that shuts down over time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't do the feedback loop, the feedback system, the testicles shrink because they're not making as much. That's also another side effect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you want to keep in mind. So that's what you standardly see. And then that, or they're going to use a gel or a cream that they do daily.
Mm-hmm.
It can be from a compounded product, or it can be like androgel, which is pharmaceutical based.
Mm-hmm.
But they charge like $300 a month for that, which is ridiculous. But
Wow.
the reason they can do that is because they patented the technique of how you apply it. So there's a lot to know here. So regular testosterone is typically about $50 a month, give or take. Okay, so
Hmm.
that's when a lot of people don't understand either. So just if you're going to use a gel, probably want to have it compounded so it won't be quite so expensive if you want to do that. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of debate back and forth on how well it absorbs. So, but you'll see a lot of
Interesting.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And then another typical protocol is, which can lead, well, with these typical protocols, what ends up happening, when you take an intramuscular injection and it's going to last you 7 days, you kind of get a lot of testosterone at once, and it balls up in a little ball and it slowly disperses into your system. But what happens over time is the estrogen starts coming up and starts taking effect, and it limits how much free testosterone you have available. And because you're getting a lump sum here, over time it starts to thicken the blood, which can cause your hematocrit and hemoglobin to rise.
Hmm.
And when that starts to elevate, then you got to bring it down. You can't leave it that way, because what that means is your blood's getting too thick. So
Mm-hmm.
now you have to give blood. So if you don't do that, it's going to lead to high blood pressure and other issues down the road. So as you can tell, there's a lot to know, but I've never had to get blood because I've done the
Right.
protocols and kept an eye on what was going on. But there's a lot of guys that have to do that on a regular basis. And that doesn't mean that you still wouldn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that tends, with this particular protocol, tends to happen for a lot of guys. All right. So then they get the total shutdown of any natural testosterone production. So there's no luteinizing hormone, hormone working at all. So, if you had to ever get off of therapy, that's a huge problem. Okay. So that's another issue too.
Hmm.
Not that you really want to, but I mean,
Right.
some guys, the way they do it, they just, they have a problem with it. So the higher levels of estrogen, like I mentioned before, that's going to affect your sex binding hormone globulins. And what these do is they affect your free testosterone. So when they get elevated, it takes away from your energy and what you'd actually be able to use that day. Then on top of all that, if you get too much, then your DHT, dihydrotestosterone levels start to rise up. And when they get too high, it starts to cause hair loss and also affects your prostate. So
Ooh.
as you can tell, a lot of mechanics going on here, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, they're manageable when you're done properly. So, but that's what a lot of guys have no idea about.
That's a lot of great information, Armin. But does it matter what type of testosterone is prescribed? I was just curious about that.
That one's a pretty debatable one.
Okay.
Most of the things that I see is, cypionate, which is an oil base. One thing I will say is some of the cypionates, they'll use cottonseed oil, and there's some research stating that that's really not a good oil to use with your body. So I recommend the
Mm-hmm.
grapeseed oil or MCT oil, based on some of the medical research and some of the statements that have been, or not statements, but things that have been talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, cypionate is one, and you have propionate, then you have enanthanate, and if I'm, maybe saying them incorrectly, and then you have undecanate. So there's four
Mm-hmm.
different types of basically esters that are made up of the testosterone. What I typically see is, for me, is a cypionate propionate combination. It's like an 80-20 blend. And
Mm-hmm.
these are just they're esters that allow your body to absorb the testosterone properly. So that's all that
Okay.
really means. And anthnate can be combined with them too. So, but you don't see a lot of undecanate with the doctors I'm working with. They don't really do much of that. So the most the most common forms, period, is going to be cypionate and anthnate, along with some propionate. So, again, just want to make sure that if you're going to be on therapy, because you got to check this, because these other compounding pharmacies, they'll use this cottonseed oil because it's pretty cheap. You want to go grapeseed oil or MCT oil.
Okay.
And I've had a few people that they find it a little bit harder to find, but there's plenty of companies that make it. So, but you have to check that.
Okay. Well, Armin, as we wrap up, we're running out of time here. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. So again, as you can see, there's a lot to know. Okay. And then going to your regular doctor to investigate this is not the best way to go, because they're not educated on all these protocol strategies. They really aren't. And neither is an endocrinologist, and neither is a urologist. Now, there are exceptions. There's some guys that, or other medical professionals that are into it and had some good understanding. I haven't ran across very many of them. So most of them are just doing these standard protocols, which I don't recommend them.
Absolutely.
Outside of that, what I feel you need to do is find the right medical professional that's at nerd status. In other words, they're so into it that they know all the different things, and that's kind of where I'm always looking for somebody that's really into it, that knows the nuances and the best ways to do things to get it to where we need to be. Because once you get it dialed in, you're really good. Your sex drive is good, your energy is good, your strength is good, and you're not over the top. It just keeps you right where you want to be. So that's what you want to do. And I'm always looking for more experts and other professionals that I can connect with to have more resources for my clients. But so far, so good.
Well, Armin, great segment. We got to run. Stand by for a quick word from NSP Nutrition. Armin and I will be right back.
Hey, and welcome back to the NSP Nutrition Show. I'm Armin Eckelbarger.
I'm Frank Mills, and welcome back to the show. We're going to be talking about, is it better to weight train fasted? Before we do, real quick, we talked about the winner, and I'm encouraging everyone to check out that 21-day challenge. It's free, and you get a lot of great information. And Armin, for free, we've had a lot of people sign up, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get good quality training, you get techniques, you get videos demonstrated, nutrition's covered there, supplements are covered there. So it's a good, well-rounded starter program, or just a reboot type program. So yeah.
Absolutely. So check out the 21-day challenge on nspnutrition.com. All right. So let's get in. Is it better to weight train fasted? Now, we both have fasted. We've tried different things, but why don't you specifically talk about or clarify what you mean by to train fasted? Yeah,
that's probably a good question. So,
okay,
from my perspective, it's, you've had no food since you went to bed. So when you wake up, you're going to be in a fasted state. So
there you go.
You could also consider not having any food for multiple hours before you train as somewhat of a fasted state as well. But what I'm talking about here is basically training early morning and on an empty stomach and not have any food. So that's what we want to kind of clarify on that.
Okay. All right. So with anything that's out there, there are pros and cons to it. What are some of the pros and cons, Armin?
All right. Good question. I feel the pros are you're going to continue to burn fat, and your insulin's low. So that's why you can do that. And so when it's low, it doesn't affect your cells when the hormones are secreting. So I feel like you get a pretty good hormone response when you're in a fasted state, because they're already active when you're sleeping. So when you wake up, they're still going to be somewhat active. So when you start that stress, they're going to kick in and start doing the work pretty
Mm-hmm.
quickly. So I just feel like you get a better hormone response, and just because insulin's out of the way. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the cons are because some people would say, well, they're lacking energy and their glucose is going to run out or get depleted pretty quickly. And then they have a fear of burning muscle, because you're breaking down muscle, and then possible loss of strength because they don't have as much glucose they think or energy. So when they're training, and then if you
Mm-hmm.
train too long, which you don't want to do that, and we talk about that all the time, if you train too long, it could start to cause your cortisol levels to jump up. And that's not good because that's catabolic. It causes more muscle breakdown. So that's what you don't want to have happen. So have a good solid window of training. And I
Mm-hmm.
typically recommend 45 minutes or less. So
Okay.
that's some of the potential cons.
And I'm sure you've tried it both either fasted or non-fasted, right?
Yeah, absolutely on that one. Yeah. So,
Okay.
right now I've been training in the mornings. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
always training fasted. Now, what I do before I train though is I take the MCT oil gel caps to give me some energy, and it's a
Oh.
medium chain triglyceride energy, so it's going to burn like a carbohydrate. And I found that's been pretty helpful. Not
Hmm.
that I was really lacking that much, anyways, but I've started
Right.
doing that too. So for the past few years, I've been training in the morning. I've done it both ways. I mean, I've trained in the evening, and I've had good results from that too. So, but when I train in the evening, I like to have 2 hours with no food before I train, to make sure I'm getting a good hormone response and I don't have any insulin getting
Mm-hmm.
in the way. So that's kind of how I approach it.
Well, you just mentioned a couple of things on how it's affected your training. Has it affected your training in other ways in a positive way?
Well, what I found out is when you first start training in the morning, you have an adjustment there because depending on how much sleep you got the night before and how rested
Right.
you are and how recovered, it takes you a little while. It takes a few workouts to kind of get used to getting that blood flow pumping. Like when you do
Mm-hmm.
train in the evening, your blood's already pumping, so
Right. Right.
it
Hmm.
doesn't take quite so much. So initially, your strength will drop a little bit, but then it bounces right back. And then again, as long as you're getting plenty of sleep, you're getting plenty of food the night before, which is important, you're fine. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're some people, stay up late and have some alcohol and some of these things, it's definitely going to affect your training. But it's going to affect your training whether you're training in the morning or training in the evening either. So I just feel like it doesn't matter when you train if you're not getting adequate recovery and nutrition. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter either way. But it is an adjustment when you get that early morning workout in.
So I am curious because you said there was an adjustment. What was your strategy when you were training later in the day?
Yes, like I mentioned before, what I make sure I was doing is to keep my insulin down so that I have my hormones would kick in and get on the receptor sites of the cells and do their work. I make sure I didn't have any food 2 hours before.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, any type of food that would affect my insulin level, I didn't want to have that. So any carbohydrates, I avoided those. It doesn't mean I couldn't have a little bit of protein, but I didn't do that very much either. I just want to
Mm-hmm.
be as no food as much as I could, and I just felt like when I did that, I still got a great pump. Everything else
Right.
was good, so I know it was working. So there's not really a problem not having any food 2 hours before, but I just think you're going to get a better hormone response because of that.
Hmm. So how did it work out for you?
Both options have worked out great. I mean, I've gotten
Okay.
good results. I've been able to reshape, some of my muscles with learning some of the training techniques and strategies, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, people think you need to have carbs uh, for your energy before you train, and
Mm-hmm.
the reality is uh, you don't have to. Okay, because you've already stored the carbs in the muscles and the liver. So there's a lot of debate going to say, well, if you don't have the carbs on a regular basis, you're going to become catabolic, et cetera, because you're going to be burning glucose. That doesn't happen if you're carb cycling or doing a low carb diet because you're burning fat as your energy system. So that's
Mm-hmm.
really not going to be on the radar because insulin's out of the way. So that's one thing. Okay.
Right.
And as you kick in your training, the glucose is going to get activated and it's going to help the muscles to do the work. And this is another reason why, I don't do long workouts because again,
Mm-hmm.
it's not beneficial. But when you run out of glucose, then you could potentially start catabolizing muscle tissue. So you work hard, work intense, and then get right back at it. So, but both have worked great for me. Being fasted, I think it's an excellent way to go. And you got to burn more body fat, because you're burning fat too. But the glucose will be used as you're doing your weight training.
So it sounds like it's really not a big deal to train in a fasted type of a format like you are talking about. It sounds like it's more of a mental adjustment than a physical. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's mental to some degree, but there is a little bit of physical, depending if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates. So,
okay.
And if you're not getting enough food the night before, then that can affect you as well. So, but that goes with everything. If you don't get enough food, period, it doesn't matter what time you train, you're gonna be flat. You're gonna feel depleted. So,
right.
And that's why supplementing with beef liver capsules or amino acids can help. If you can't get food in, you can always use those. And there's no fat in it, no carbs, so you're not gonna have any insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a nutshell, whatever time you're training and you're doing it fasted, your body's going to adapt to it, and it's going to use your reserves and your resources because you're doing it on a regular basis. So the body's like, okay, we need to be doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're eating right in recovery, you're going to be fine, because that's what's worked for me. And again, whether it's morning or in the evening, I'm training without any food, and I'm fine. I mean, I get really good pumps. People,
Mm-hmm.
they're really surprised by how I do that. But I don't have to do all the other stuff.
Well, on the other shows that we've talked about the fasting, a lot of people were concerned about losing muscle. How do you feel about that, Armin?
Well, I haven't, in my opinion, lost much muscle at all, if any. And again, like I mentioned, I get a good pump. So I just think that's kind of overthinking it personally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you're eating high carb and low fat, then you need to replenish your energy system a lot more often, because you're running off quick energy of carbs and sugars. So I think that could be a challenge. Okay, so because you got insulin's elevated all the time to help process your carbohydrates.
Right.
So that's why I carb cycle. So I'm using fat as my all day energy. So, but when I'm getting ready to train, then the stored carbs are going to be activated to do the training. And I'm not going to overdo it. So whatever I have, and people, you don't use up all your carbs that quickly. Okay. So your body always keeps some in place, but that's why you want to keep your training short, so you don't overdo it.
Well, as we wrap up the segment here, Armin, any final thoughts?
Yeah. One thing is if you're doing carb cycling or low carb, your body's burning fat, and basically because you're not using insulin, that helps to preserve muscle. So kind of keep that in mind. And Vince knew that too. But just because you may seem to have a little more energy when you're adding some carbohydrate doesn't mean that you're building more muscle. That's not that. Again, carbs don't build muscle. So weight training is all about breaking down the muscle and then repairing it with proper nutrition, and getting that done with good recovery. And just you got to keep that in mind. Keep it simple. Okay. So there's plenty of people building muscle, training fasted, and it's not a big deal. So, and I'm one of them. So keep that, if you need to do that, you're not going to be hurt.
Well, a terrific show, Armin. A lot of great information, and we want your questions and topics. Keep them coming, because like I said in the last show, we're going to start introducing your questions and topics into a Q&A part of the segment of the show. So we want to hear your questions. The best way to contact us, scan one of those QR codes above us, or you can comment in the YouTube section. You can still do that, or email support@nspnutrition.com. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions, and it's an important part of the show, and we're really thankful for our audience. Right, Armin?
Oh, yeah. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to the contest winners, and tune in next week for a brand new episode of the NSP Nutrition Show.
Hey, thanks for checking out the NSP Show. Go to nspnutrition.com, where you can find a whole heap of resources to help you achieve stunning definition and eye-popping levels of muscularity. Don't forget, you can save 10% on your first order by using the code NSP Show at the checkout. Catch you next time.